Welcome to Justice and Judgment. Again, I've got retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. Bob, we all woke up this morning early to the news that the Venezuelan president, and according to who you listen to, he was abducted, kidnapped, but really he was arrested, was he not?
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, they escorted him via helicopter to the USS Iowa, uh, Iwo Jima, rather. And of course, that was not for a Caribbean cruise, but for a short trip until he could be placed on a jet and then flown to New York, where he is landing tonight and will be incarcerated for the term.
The first thing I thought of when I heard that, I had to take a double look because I was going, no, we didn't just do that. But then I got to thinking about it this morning at breakfast with my dad and my sister and her husband and my wife. I thought, how difficult had that to have been to be able to abduct a sitting president, or not abduct, I hate using that word, to arrest a sitting president with all the security, and he had to know that Trump was coming and just make that go off without a hitch.
Well, I'm sure there were a few hitches in the interim. We're not going to report on those. But yeah, according to General Kane, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in his briefing there with the president at Mar-a-Lago this morning, um, the operation planning in detail began months ago,
Right.
and it didn't really get the approval until December. And then they've been waiting for the weather to cooperate, and it wasn't until last night at 22:46, in other words, 10:46 Eastern time, that President Trump gave him the go-ahead. And then, they launched 150 aircraft, all sorts of aircraft, ISR fighters, bombers, the certainly the 35s, 18s, you name it. And then, of course, a host of Army helicopters, hugged the water line until they got into the mountains, sat there for a while, and then at 1:01 Eastern Time this morning, they knocked on the door at Maduro's compound, took a lot of fire, apparently. Now, of course, Maduro was guarded by Cubans, not necessarily by Venezuelans. And then they knew the area, I assume it was Delta. They knew the area because, according to Trump in an interview, they had been practicing on a replica of the facility. Now, this was a very significant intelligence operation because they obviously were tracking him incredibly closely. They knew his driving habits. They knew where he lived in particular. They knew the inside of the house. They knew that he had a safe room with a giant steel door. And of course, they went prepared to even knock that down. They didn't have to do that, fortunately. And of course, the fact that they got out, snatching, a president and his wife without suffering any kills of
Yes.
American forces was phenomenal. There were a few wounded, as I understand, and one helicopter took some uh, direct fire, but it
I heard that as
was
well.
able to recover to the aircraft carrier. So, when you look at the military operation, it was superb. And that should send a signal to anyone in the world that wants to test us any further.
Absolutely. It makes me believe when Mr. Trump says he's not bluffing, he's not bluffing. And he's determined to stand by his word. Bob, people ask, was this about drugs? Was this about oil? Was it about drugs and oil? Do you have an opinion on that or any insight?
Well, I really think, Chris, that this was about U.S. dominance in our own region. If you read the national security strategy that came out a month ago from the Trump administration, they basically uh, laid out a 21st century Monroe Doctrine, basically, that says that, we don't want all these outsiders here, the Chinese, Russians, Iranians, and the like. This is our territory. And if we're not going to have good neighbors, we're going to change their ways. And of course, that's a signal to not only Venezuela, but to Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, and others that may not want to cooperate and collaborate with the United States. And so it's really about us being the big dog in an area that we don't want others interfering with. And the fact that Maduro was shipping drugs as the head of a military cartel running Caracas, the fact that he was selling oil through a shadow fleet over certainly to China and cooperating with the Cubans and the Russians and others, those are part, but incidental, I think, to the broader strategic aim of, really wanted to wrestle back control of our own region and bring harmony to our neighborhood.
Can you help my audience understand what Trump meant by getting back our oil, or they've been stealing from us? Um, I wasn't sure I completely understood that argument. Was it through businesses that we had set up over there or agreements that we had?
Yeah, well, Citco and some other organizations which were predominantly American, built, the infrastructure that has crumbled over the last quarter century in Venezuela. And so, we had contracts, we were buying their oil, and then all of a sudden they decide that after, of course, we didn't legitimize their uh, so-called election
Right.
that Maduro walked into a year ago. And as a result, a number of agreements fell apart, and we came to the conclusion that we weren't going to tolerate that. So, uh, the oil infrastructure was partly American, built by American, but certainly financed by Venezuelan uh, proceeds from the sale of their oil. But it's also part and parcel of being a narco terror organization, being aligned with the likes of Hezbollah, Hamas, the Cuban intelligence agency, the Chinese who are trying to be dominant throughout Central and South America, and of course the Russians who are there as advisors, and they have been for some time. So there are a host of issues here. What's interesting is that I remember uh, 34 years ago when Noriega
Hmm.
was taken down. And my
Right.
boss at the time had written the operations order for that operation. And I'm thinking that, the operation that was probably used in part this time has been on the shelf off and on for long periods of time because we begin to plan the details of these things long before the
Right.
crisis really promotes the requirement for us to follow through.
Well, we've heard some condemnation from, I think, the president of Colombia. Cuba has made some comments. Have we heard anything, or do we expect to hear anything from Russia, China, Iran, anybody like that?
Well, the Russians condemned it. They said it was an illegal operation. That's very rich for Vladimir Putin's
Right.
organization. The Chinese, of course, were meeting with Maduro yesterday,
Oh, wow.
and we evidently made sure that they were not involved in the situation that took place earlier this morning. The Chinese are watching, the Russians are watching. I would argue that the people in downtown Tehran, especially the Ayatollah and the IRGC, the Quds Force, and all their minions, they now recognize, after having lost their nuclear program and many of their scientists and most of their top generals, that we mean serious, that if they're going to persecute their own people and they're going to continue to be bad actors in the region,
Right.
that something similar to what happened last night could happen to them. They could disappear.
That's a sobering thought. What, how do you think it's going to change the geopolitical landscape, possibly in the next, I don't know, month, the next couple of months? or it will it at all?
No, I think it will. I think the warning signal to the Colombian president, who knows that his country produces cocaine that is transshipped to the United States and kills thousands of Americans, that he's on notice. He can squawk as much as he wants, but he's on notice. The Mexican president, and I was listening to Trump this morning on Fox News, and he was being very clear. He says, look, she doesn't control that country. It's controlled by drug cartels. And I think that the drug cartels in Mexico, as well as Colombia and elsewhere, are on notice. The What Nancy Reagan started during the Reagan administration, the war on drugs, has taken a serious turn here,
Right.
and we're uh, very clearly willing to take whatever is necessary to remove some of these culprits. And so, Mexico and I think Colombia are on notice, as well as others around the world. So uh, this is a wake-up call. 6 months ago, B-2s rained down on nuclear facilities inside Iran. Uh, you know, what, 6 years ago, Trump killed Soleimani there in Baghdad International. Um, no telling what else is on the horizon. Of course, we went after, you know, Islamist terrorists, ISIS-K in northern Nigeria because they were killing Christians. So there's some pucker factor here at work across
Yes.
the world. And if you're a rogue, you're probably going to begin to think twice about what you're doing.
I believe Trump has, in the best possible way, set the precedent. Said, "Hey, I'm not playing when I say don't do that, don't do that." And I was going to ask you about Mexico, and you went ahead and answered that because that was my next thought. What about the cartels that because it's coming right across the border, and those guys have got to, at least at now, believe that maybe we don't want to chance it. Maybe we need to back off. So.
Yeah, well, they're going to learn a lesson if they don't. And I don't think, I've been asked time and again, would we go into Mexico? Um, I think we would under certain circumstances. We'd like the Mexican government to invite us. Do we know where these people are? Of course we do.
Yes.
Trump made a point. Yeah, the CIA, the NSA, the NGA, all of these intelligence organizations were working and collaborating with Special Operations Command out of Tampa and Southcom, which oversaw the whole operation. And we track these people. I've seen some of the documents that we track people with. So we kind of know their ins and outs, in spite of the fact that they may not be aware that they're being watched and recorded. And so if they want to continue to do bad things, and Mr. Trump decides that he has the legal wherewithal to do something, we could take him out as well.
I heard Jonathan Turley's opinion on that. Mike Davis heard his opinion on that, and they all supported and said he had every legal right, just like they did when they went in and got Noriega. And
Right.
so everybody can just stop crying now.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Bob, I appreciate your time. I want to remind everybody your latest book, AI for the Future of Mankind. Um, and you've got a follow-up to that, don't you, coming out sometime?
Yeah, actually, it's a trilogy, Chris.
Okay.
AI for the future, mankind's future, is about, what is AI? The
Right.
next one is the new AI Cold War, which kind of answers the question, who controls it, geopolitically and well as corporations. And the third one, which is really significant for Christians, is the final algorithm. And it's a deep dive scripturally into
Okay.
what all this means, especially for end times people that are beginning to wonder, is this the mark of the beast, or is this uh, really about what John says in Revelation on a host of issues. So you really need to understand AI. You need to know who controls it, and then you need to know where it is likely to take us. And I that's why I had to write three books so that I could kind of put those all together. And I document these incredibly well. And I think they're well written. And I would hope that people, especially Christians, wake up and recognize what's at stake here. The geopolitics of Venezuela or Iran and so forth, those are significant. But AI is the new electricity. AI
Yes.
is
Yes.
potentially far more uh, significant in our future lives than anything that I can think of.
So when will the second and third part of the books be coming out? You got a date set up
April,
yet?
yeah, April for the new AI Cold War, and
Okay.
then this summer, probably August for the final algorithm. But like I say, AI for mankind's future, it's comprehensive, but
Yes.
you need to understand what this stuff's about,
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was real easy reading because there's a lot of things that I didn't understand about AI. And so you've really got to take a deep dive and do sometimes a little extra research. I want to
Sure.
remind people too about your preparing for World War III. I think all these books are very timely, Bob. I appreciate your time, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you soon about that new book coming out.
Okay, Chris, you have a great day.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Yeah.